Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with my partner, Patrick Mooney. We are your Cubs beat writers over at The Athletic. Patrick, we have a mailbag episode. As always, the fans came out in full force. This was, it's approaching the trade deadline. A lot of trade questions. Fans are desperate for a move. Obviously, the Cubs need pitching. We spent all of last episode talking about various pitchers. Let's kick this off from a question from the Lizard King, who has been asking a lot of questions lately. Yeah, our buddy, the Lizard King. He wants to know, does this year truly feel different? Do you feel a certain buzz around Wrigley, Craig, the fans, the players, etc.? What are both of your highlights of the season thus far? Yeah, I mean, it feels different. Absolutely, to me. I think when you win the way they've been winning, when the offense performs, I think we've talked about this on previous episodes. Like, there are feelings of there are ways to be a good team, and then there are ways to be an exciting good team.
Yes.
And when you're like a powerhouse offense, when you're scoring a lot of runs, and when you're hitting home runs, when you have a superstar like PCA, when you have like this, very a dynamic star like PCA, and this other star in Kyle Tucker, it just makes it very fun. It makes it fun to cover, and it brings these vibes to Wrigley that really I feel like we've had in fleeting moments over the past half decade, but really hasn't been there probably since 16, 17, maybe at parts of 18 before the end of that season. There is an absolutely different feel. My highlight, I think it would be the game against the Diamondbacks, where they came back early in the season at home.
Oh, that was a crazy one. Yeah, that was like a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, where they kind of blew it. They had a lead and they blew it late in the game, and they were down by like 4 or 5 runs, and then they just hit a bunch of home runs and scored a ton of runs and ended up winning like a 12-11 game, 13-12. I don't remember the exact score. That type of stuff is just like, the energy in the building is just like, it's the type of stuff like you go home and you're like, okay, I can't go straight. Like, I think that was a day game, so wasn't going to bed anyways. But like, you feel it. Like, we're not fans, but we still, like, there's an energy that you feel from covering something like that. That one stands out to me. I'm probably missing something that was either fun or funny or exciting that I'm sure other fans would point out.
Yeah, I think from a media perspective, it is different just having Pico Armstrong as this huge evolving national story and trying to kind of introduce or reintroduce him to a wider audience. Kyle Tucker, a far different personality, but has a similar weight of just, you put Kyle Tucker's name in a headline on our website, like, people are interested in him. And I think the buzz, you notice it in even just subtle ways. Some of it is obvious. I mean, the other day, it was a Wednesday afternoon. It was 92 degrees at first pitch. It was not a comfortable place to be. The place just absolutely packed, just like shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow, like making your way through the crowd. And then there are things like, I saw it in 23 and it was very fleeting, but in the second half there, where like you see sometimes like the traffic patterns or finding parking spaces or the foot traffic, or even when we're leaving Wrigley, sometimes you can see like, are the bars still pretty crowded? Like, kind of the more low key ones, Waveland and Clark there. And all of that is certainly noticeable. And yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see in terms of like highlights. I think that is very much still to come. I'm very interested to see like what they do at the deadline, how September is. And yeah, I mean, we covered the last playoff game at Wrigley Field, and it was a pretty dystopian, miserable experience of the Marlins and the Cubs with small group of friends, family, like Wrigley workers, Cubs employees, and then to do Zooms for this group that was going to be like broken apart. Like, I think seeing that in October would be interesting to, again, now that we're fans, now that we care what happens one way or the other. But I think a lot of the season is still unwritten.
Yeah, the packed ballpark is something that I feel like it. There were brief moments of it. There were that they'd be like, "Oh, it's a big series. Oh, the Yankees are in town, and the ballpark's packed."
Yeah.
To get that, like there were April games where the ballpark was packed. There's like you said, it was Wednesday against Kansas City. Like that. Yeah, I guess it's it's an AL team, and maybe KC fans showed up because they don't get the opportunity to come to Wrigley as much. Still, like the 40,000 plus, like it's been a little while since we've seen regular 40,000 plus at
Yeah,
Wrigley.
no doubt, no
So
doubt.
so these vibes are absolutely different. The buzz around the ballpark. Just talking about the team, covering the team, there's a different feel, and it's nice to experience that because it can get a little mundane for us as well. I mean, frustrating for the fans, but mundane for us to have to um, either they've been scrambling to try and get back in the race the past couple of years,
Yeah.
or it's like, okay, I guess we're writing about the big picture. It's May 15th. That's just not as fun.
And then we've intentionally tried to reshape our coverage a little bit of focusing on personalities and moments and not as much on process, because there are players here who are going to be around for a long time or are super interesting and newsworthy. I do think Craig Counsell, I'm not going to say he's different. I think it's just knowing him for a second season. I think there's a little bit of a different give and take. Not that he's changed or anything like that, but I think you've seen his influence on the team a little more this year. And, the players, we've talked about this for a while. Like, it was a good group of guys for years. They just didn't have like that difference maker. And they also didn't really have as much credibility, frankly, and to have guys who've won World Series elsewhere to where it's not just Dansby Swanson kind of like carrying the mantle for that. I mean, players feel that difference. I mean, that was one of the first things Nico Horner said to me in April when I just kind of approached him in San Diego on one of those early West Coast trips. And he mentioned Kyle Tucker, just like this kind of loose energy he brings. And, there are those scenes in the clubhouse that you can see. Again, winning is always the biggest part. The individual talent is the biggest part. But, thus far, it's been a pretty good vibe. And I think that's reflected in how there hasn't been that long extended skid that ruined previous years.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a question from Al Coulter. What's the status of Jameson Tyone and Javier Assad? Assad pitched Thursday in Arizona, pitched really well. It was 3 innings, correct, Patrick? 3 innings.
Yeah, 3 scoreless. Yep.
3 scoreless, 6 strikeouts, I believe, no walks. That's a good sign. He's going to head out to an affiliate. That's what we were told, I believe, on Tuesday. After the start in Arizona, next stop is started an affiliate. Tyone is throwing today. Today is Friday when we record this. Friday. There was a chance he may throw at Wrigley before the team goes to the south side. And then he will throw again. This is a live BP. If I didn't specify that, live BP again in Milwaukee next week. And then he'll go out on assignment. I assume we don't have number of starts for either of them. I think Assad probably is ready before Tyone, but it's probably fewer out like rehab starts for Tyone. So maybe it's close to around the same time. But I think they're being intentionally methodical with Tyone. This is a guy that has had some lower muscle injuries in his time at the Cubs. Had that ankle injury, and you never know, like a major ankle injury years ago. That was with the Yankees, I believe, or I believe it was earlier in his career. And you never know how that impacts your lower half going forward for the rest of your career. So they're being methodical about it, and you know, that's their prerogative. That's that's how these things sometimes work. Patrick, it is now time for our DraftKings player spotlight. If I can find the right thing to play, DraftKings player spotlight. All right, Patrick. Today we are spotlighting Shota Imanaga. Shota Imanaga came back from injury on June 26th, Patrick, and he has a 1.78 ERA in 5 starts. He pitches tonight, Friday night, against the White Sox. I mean, he's taken it to another level in the last 2 starts, 7 innings each. Just 1 earned run combined against the Yankees and the Red Sox. Both teams are, that's a good Yankees team, a good offense in the Yankees, and a Red Sox team that had been red hot, and he cooled them down. I mean, Shota's. We talk about Assad and Tyone coming back from injury. It just what a godsend this guy's been coming back from injury for a team that we're going to talk about it more. Needs pitching. Imagine if they didn't have him. Imagine if like Matthew Boyd's a great story, but I mean Shota, geez, what this guy just continues to blow me away.
Yeah, the way you frame that, it made me think of kind of the last rebuild here of how you kind of need players to pop, surprises to happen, and major developments. And Kyle Hendricks was not on a lot of people's radars. Jake Arrieta was kind of a borderline AAA major league pitcher, and Shota has been almost every bit of that. He still has to prove it in the postseason. It's still only his 2nd season, but I was thinking about this the other day. I haven't written a lot about Shota, just the way it has fallen, his starts and stuff like that. And obviously he was injured, but what an unbelievably consistent guy. I mean, his shortest start of the year was 4 innings, and that was 4 scoreless in Japan on opening day against the defending World Series champs. Just every time out, keeps his team in the game, even when, I'm thinking I was at his start in Minnesota, and he kind of got in a little trouble early, and you're wondering, is he still kind of working off the rust, or maybe it's not his night? And he still just battles, and he makes adjustments really fast on his own. Still just a great personality in the clubhouse, in the interview room. They really, I think if the Cubs get really good here, I think we're going to look back on that decision that we wrote about for our opening day feature to really invest in Japan. Shota sort of fell into their laps a little bit since he was just hanging out by the O'Hare Airport or wherever it was. He was working out, and he had his, I don't know if it was Schaumburg. I have it written down somewhere, but finally they were able to draw the Cubs out there and make what has been just an unbelievable deal that, if I remember correctly, there's going to be some decisions to be made after this season in terms of kind of picking up, I believe, an extra year on his deal to kind of max that out. Because this is not a guy you can let just walk as a free agent after this year.
Yeah, 32-10. The Cubs are when he starts, just insane. And it does feel like he's trending in the right direction. Council said this straight up, and it was something that I think we talked about. Was it last year? Last year with Justin Steele, you miss this time. It's not an arm injury. Is this a blessing in disguise? You don't want to lose a guy. You don't. But they didn't collapse during that time. And now you have perhaps a really fresh arm that's about to hit their stride at the most critical point of the season. Maybe they're at their peak come October instead of gassed in October. I don't want to say the injury was a good thing. It wasn't. But that's in the past now, and going forward, you could have a really nice scenario for Shota Imanaga. All right, now let's turn it over to Alana Rizzo for our Northside Territory DraftKings pick.
All right, guys, I swung and missed last week. Thanks very much, Colorado Rockies. Time to take another crack on putting together another 2-leg parlay. I like Freddie Peralta and the Brewers to beat the Marlins at home. It's at -227. So let's add the D-backs money line over the Pirates. Easy enough, correct? I think so. Putting them together gets me to +153. I'm putting 100 down on DraftKings Sportsbook to win 253. Sahadev and Patrick, back to you.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Patrick, let's get back to the mailbag. Some more Tayon Assad related questions, with Tayon and Assad coming back and presumably a trade for a starting pitcher. What happens with Horton? Isn't this close to the most innings pitched he has pitched? Patrick, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to go full Craig Counsell here and say, they're worried about the game tonight. They got to fill a spot this weekend with the openers. I'm very curious, as we all are, to see what they do at the deadline. I think that can answer some of this. I think we've also learned that setbacks happen with injuries, that even though they both seem to be on track, like, that doesn't mean there's still a lot of time for things to go wrong. I would guess that Colin Ray would be an easier move into a swingman role, just given his experience in that and how long he's been in the big leagues, versus Horton as a rookie who has, frankly, some, major injury questions in his file. But I don't know, when they called up Horton, they were pretty clear with us, right, Sahadev, in terms of, like, there are no limits here. They're just going to keep reading and reacting, right?
Yeah. So his prior to this season, 88 and a third innings, or most in his professional career combined through multiple levels. This year combined, if I'm doing my math right, it's 91 and a third with AAA in the big leagues. So he's already passed his career high. There's no math to this. There's no, like, sound math where they say the Tom Verducci rule. That's it was an interesting thing back in the day. It's just not it's not hard science. Frankly, none of this is anymore. Like, they have a lot more things that they study. They have a lot more things that they look at. It's not yes, it's a little bit better than it probably was, but they don't know exactly what they're doing. They don't have they don't know how the body will react. You have to individualize these things too. So they're trying to just take information from the individual, seeing how their body is reacting on a day-to-day basis, whether it's looking at their bullpens or their starts. How's the stuff? How's their arm slot? How's their body reacting to workouts? Every day they're taking in information and they're using all of that. So they're not looking at just the innings. That's frankly, the way they talk about it now, just looking at innings is rudimentary for them. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe in a few years we'll find out that actually that's all you should look at.
Yeah.
Who knows? But they are trying to understand these things better, and it's a constant process that's evolving all the time. So yeah, I don't think that they may get creative and skip a start here, I agree with you. Colin Ray's most likely to be in like a swingman role if they acquire enough guys and everybody gets healthy. Assad has swingman role capabilities. He has options too. He can just be depth until he's needed. I think he's an important piece. He can be a really helpful piece down the stretch. I wouldn't assume that he has to be on the roster and he has to pitch. They're going to have their best pitchers on the roster, especially in August and September. They won't just, it's no innings limit. They're going to see how the body reacts, see how Horton's doing. I feel like Horton is about to hit his stride. I know his last outing against Boston he's not getting deep into games and he has kind of a quicker hook, I think, and that's perfectly fine. But I think he's pitching really well. He was out there matching Crochet for a while. He just didn't go deep into the game. We'll see how he does this weekend against is he pitching this weekend? Yes, yeah, because he pitched Sunday, so he'll pitch tomorrow or I can't remember. They have a lot of TBAs in there, so
I'm gonna look it up, but yeah, TBA is definitely looking good for this weekend.
Yeah, I think TBA is Sunday and Horton is Saturday. And just that
is correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Horton,
and just a random thought. Yeah, Council did emphasize that just because there was a day off, Matthew Boyd isn't pitching on Sunday. Yeah, just because it would be a normal rest. They'd prefer normal rest nowadays is 5 days. They prefer giving guys a full 5 days. That's just how a lot of teams are like that. So I know we're used to 4 days rest. I think they prefer 5 days, especially for a guy like Boyd. The Cubs prospect capital gets talked about a lot in terms of trades, but what's the chance Jed shocks everyone and trades from the MLB roster? He did say he might have to get creative. That's from Jamie Weiss. I straight up asked him this question. And then he said, this is not an answer to your question, so don't connect the two, which is kind of odd to say, but then he immediately went into the they have to be creative and creativity.
He's been thinking about this idea a lot, though. You can tell. He was like, well, this is kind of the debate we're having, but don't, it directly.
Yeah. Look, who would be the options currently on the MLB roster? I think outside of a bench guy, like if someone wants Vidal Brujan, they'd listen on him. I think you could see Ben Brown in the right type of deal, and we'll talk more about that. There's a question about Ben Brown next. And you look, Matt Shaw. There was a question that I didn't include, but I'll answer it here. If they acquire Eugenio Suarez, Matt Shaw doesn't suddenly become available because Matt Shaw's the long-term answer at third base. Eugenio Suarez would be a temporary upgrade for 2 months. Shaw's not expendable just if they get the temporary fill-in guy or a bench guy or something like that. I think it would have to be like bowled over type thing to consider Shaw. And I you can't create holes for the long term, like big gaping holes that unless you're getting someone long term, you just can't do that. All right. After poor performances from Brown and Wicks, what is the future for them with the Cubs? Hard to trade them when the value is low, but you don't want to get nothing out of them. Using Caleb Killian as an example, that's Justin. I think that's a fair way of putting it. Their value isn't at its highest, but you risk. These aren't prospects who are you could make the argument that they traded Zaire Hope too early, that they traded Alphonsine Rosario too early. They didn't maximize those values. I don't like with Zaire Hope, you got a stud, so don't overthink it. With Alphonsine Rosario, hey, this guy's having a decent season in the minors. Could you have gotten a little bit more for him than Eli Morgan now, or a next offseason, whatever? I get the premise of this question. I think it's different once you hit the big leagues. And you have to think about the Caleb Killian situation where it's like, look, this Ben Brown is still going to be valuable. He's under control. He's got nasty stuff. Someone may really value him as a reliever, maybe now. A team like the Diamondbacks could use Wicks or Brown because they're probably going to trade both 2 starters. And they're just going to be like, hey, Wicks, you get unlimited leash. just go out there, make every start. Don't someone like Brown could really use that mental relief where he's not thinking about every pitch, every mistake I make means I'm being sent to the minors or out of the rotation. So I think yes, their value isn't at the peak that it was maybe a year ago for some of these guys, or 2 years ago for Wicks, a year ago for Brown. I also think like you can't assume that their value will improve. And I don't think it's nothing. I don't think those values are so bad, so impacted right now. They're probably not the primary piece if you're getting a stud in return. If you're getting like Joe Ryan, they're not the primary piece, but that they're like, especially Brown is a good second piece. If Brown's your second piece, I think teams would be attracted to that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like, let's say Brown and Wicks go elsewhere and they have nice seasons. There's no guarantee that would have happened in Chicago in this scenario. We've seen it too often, just how much the change of scenery helps. I mentioned Jake Arrieta earlier in the show. Like, not saying those guys are going to go win Cy Young awards, but like there's something to it. And, also holding on to them means that they could get injured too. And like no one's asking for my opinion, but I feel like these pitching prospects the Cubs have, like I would be moving them left and right. Like you can always find more guys who throw hard. They have a lot of confidence in their infrastructure. And I think the churn on the pitching side is a really good thing. I mean, our colleague Ken Rosenthal had a good column on AJ Preller in San Diego that published, I believe, Friday. And just how they kind of cycle guys in and out. Like they've found something there. That's part of like the kind of the sleight of hand that they do in San Diego. I think that's a good example. We've talked before about Cleveland, Tampa Bay, what they do. Place like that could help a pitcher like those guys, but otherwise I don't know. They signed Matthew Boyd and Shota Imanaga when no one was really like clamoring for those guys, and they've both been all-stars in Chicago. Like I think they can get creative and figure something out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick, let's take a quick break and then come back and wrap it up with a few more questions.
Time for a quickie break. Todd Father and I are going to tell you about Huel, but it's mostly going to be Todd Father because I'm going to take a sip.
Well, we're talking about Huel, 27 vitamins and minerals. It's a complete meal. Let's listen. We all have busy schedules. As Scott's sipping it down, it looks delicious. It tastes delicious. When we're on the run, we need something to eat quick. And guess what? Huel is there. All different flavors. Scotty loves them. I love them. And I love how variety packed it is. And we can eat them any time of the day.
That's right. Yeah, check out the website. There's bars. There are so many different flavors. I love the black edition. Chocolate, 35 grams of protein. There's strawberry shortcake, coffee caramel, cookies and cream. I can go on. And you get yourself 15% off if you're a new customer using the code FOUL at Huel.com/foul. Please see our description for the terms and conditions. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition with the code FOUL at Huel.com/foul.
All right, Patrick, we got a question from Billy Rocket. Why do you have to wait till the deadline to do anything? Look, I think Council said this. It is a Jed favorite line, but deadline spur action. That's the reality of it. Like Jed loves to be aggressive and make moves. Like he wishes there were deadlines for like for free agency. Remember the flurry before the lockout hit?
Yeah.
These deadlines force people to make moves. It forces decision making. The sellers especially don't want to feel like they couldn't wring every value out of whoever's maybe getting desperate. More teams may suddenly, you get closer to the deadline, they feel like teams start getting more desperate. Who knows? Maybe that's how the Cubs acquired PCA. Like that was a big back and forth. We've heard so many stories about that front office in New York that there were people that were like, no way, don't trade him. And there was debate back and forth. And then they were like, we're doing this type thing. Yeah, it's like there's also like teams like Jed will always tell you like the prices are insane early before the deadline, well before the deadline. So prices go down as you get closer, but also I think it's probably like some sort of graph where it's like they're like way up here and then it goes down and then like spikes a little bit right before the deadline, right? Like the hours before. And I think that's why it takes a little time. Like teams are they're pitting other teams against each other. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, Billy, this is a really good question because I feel like it comes up often, and there's sometimes as reporters we just assume stuff as sort of like common knowledge, but like we just hear it from certain people every year, but it's a dynamic that doesn't really change. Maybe the Naylor trade does spur something, now that the Diamondbacks are open for business. There are sometimes considerations too of like a starting pitcher. If he has a start looming, sometimes you want to get that done beforehand so he doesn't get injured, or the acquiring team wants him for that extra start or two. I think, Jed, when he was breaking up the team in 21, I think really wanted to kind of spread things out and focus on one deal at a time. And of course, it all kind of came together within the last 24 hours or so. But I think we'll start to see some movement here. At least I certainly hope so. It'd be nice to have something more concrete to write about.
Yeah, Josh Naylor obviously got traded. The Diamondbacks look like they're ready to make moves, or have started making moves, and ready to move the rest of their impending free agents. We'll see if they move all of them or what, but that makes a lot of sense for them to start the process, and I'm sure other teams are making those decisions right now. I wouldn't be surprised if things get a little bit more active over the weekend, and then we have, I'm not sure if big names get moved or what, but there will be activity over the next few days. Final question: why are fans so obsessed with not trading Owen Caissie? That's from Bob Stewart. I don't know. I'm not seeing all of this. I'm not seeing the hand wringing as far as don't trade Caissie. But I'm sure it's out there. Look, there's an argument that can be made that Kyle Tucker is a free agent at the end of the year. You don't want to move Caissie because he's the logical replacement. I also think, I think for me, you don't move Caissie for a rental. Like, I don't think the Cubs would even consider that. Think about this, that he was likely the main piece of the Luzardo trade. That was for 2 years of a pitcher. He's probably more valuable now. You're not going to give him up for 2 months of a pitcher. So I think that would be my focus. You don't give him up for a rental. I don't think you can prospect Kling right now. And I don't also think you can assume that he just slips right in and fills in for Kyle Tucker next year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not sure. I kind of see conflicting signals there of, I guess social media is not a good gauge in general, but I think there's this thought of the Cubs have to go all in. And then there is this, counterbalance of people love their prospects. That's just kind of how the game works these days. I would just say that, Caissie does feel a little bit like flavor of the month right now, just in terms of like he's on a insane hot streak.
He's on a tear.
I remember, wasn't it just this year, Moises Ballesteros? That was like a big thing, and he came up, and he looked like someone who probably needed a little more time in the minors. Understandably, he's very young. I haven't heard a lot of clamoring for him to come back since then. I think he's still a very nice prospect. I think certain names, our buddy Jesse Rogers we call the internet names of just that. They just kind of, like Matt Mervis a couple of years ago was just this like drum beat. And then, oftentimes with prospects, they come up and it's like, okay. Like you just got either they come out the gate really hot and then the league adjusts, or it takes them a really long time. We're seeing it with Matt Shaw, right?
Yeah.
Like has a couple nice games out of the All-Star break, and now it's like, oh, they don't even need Eugenio Suarez. They got Matt Shaw, and whereas it wasn't that long ago where it's like, this is the weak spot of the team. This cannot, a serious World Series team cannot have him as a third baseman. So I'm with you. I'm very skeptical of the idea of the Cubs giving up Owen Caissie for any rental player, pitcher or hitter. But after that, I would be very open-minded, just because maybe this is the moment to strike. Talked about like Zaire Hope earlier. Maybe they traded him a little too early, theoretically, because obviously Michael Busch has been really good. But like, I don't know. We're talking about the Ben Brown, Jordan Wicks trade value, right? Like, maybe this is Owen Caissie's like zenith as a trade chip. I don't know. I mean, people think, for years now, people have said he can legit flat out hit. Even people outside the organization, we've heard that of like, no, I'm not doubting his talent. It's more of just kind of how the business works.
Yeah, you never know. Prospects, we talk about this all the time. If I were to bet on what he'd be, I'd be like, yeah, solid major leaguer. But like, you give that up to try and win a World Series for a guy that's controllable beyond this year, especially. Prospects aren't about like what they're going to be. It's about their current value right now. That's how you have to look at it. You can't say like, I'm convinced that he will be a bust. It doesn't matter if you're convinced that he will be a bust. What's his value right now? He has a ton of value on the market. So don't give him up for 2 months of someone, but also don't cling. Because this is part of being in a front office, is being able to evaluate the talent that you have. It's really important that you're able to do that. We can debate whether they've nailed it in previous trades or not, or however you want to look at whether it's Cam Smith, Zaire Hope, any of those guys. I think they kind of knew sometimes what they had. Maybe they just felt like these were the moves they had to make at those moments. I feel like trading Owen Caissie right now is really maximizing his value. He's doing what you want a prospect to do right before the trade deadline. You'd love it if all the others were doing that, frankly. You'd love it if Alcantara was on a red hot tear as well, and Ballesteros and Jackson Wiggins and Jefferson Rojas. All of them just tear it apart and then see who has the best value and then who you want to keep and who you want to move. Right now, it's Caissie tearing it up, and I think that works in the Cubs' favor. So we'll see what they do. There are going to probably, by the time we record another episode, we're going to hear more. Maybe we'll have a move to talk about. We'll see what the weekend holds. It's 3 against the White Sox. The White Sox have been playing much better. They're playing well right now. I don't know how the Cubs are going to do this weekend, frankly. Like that was, like I said, against Kansas City. I thought that was one of their tougher series as far as the way they performed. But this team has been resilient and bounced back quickly and impressed almost immediately after bad moments. So we'll see how the weekend goes. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. This is Northside Territory. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and subscribe to The Athletic, where Patrick and I are on top of all things Cubs. Thanks, everyone. Take care.